so this is for the subject risk management, and the topic for this video is risk management policy. This is chapter 7 on the online resource material. Okay, so let's begin. Risk management policy. So first off, we have RASP, Risk Architecture, Strategy, and Protocols. Ito yung framework ng ating risk management plan. Okay. So the most important component of the RASP is the risk management policy. So under the framework, essentially you use the framework to create the risk management policy. Okay? Tapos, itong risk management policy, this covers the overall strategy of the organization towards risk management. It also defines the risk management roles and responsibilities and set out the protocols that should be followed. So essentially, dinidefine dito or kumbaga, dinedetermine kung sino-sinong mga tao yung magiging responsible for handling the risk management. And of course, essentially, that would follow yung strategy ng organization, how they're going to manage the risk that they are exposed to, and then yung protocols or yung guidelines or activities that are going to execute to address those risks. Okay? So, itong RASP nga, Risk Architecture, Strategy, and Protocols, ito yung risk framework natin na nagsusupport ng risk management process. Okay? Yung risk management process natin, review, these are the 7 R's with the 4 T's. Tapos, ayan. So, we have here one of the frameworks. Ang sabi dito, kailangan ay meron siyang objectives, mandate, and commitment to manage risk, the strategy. So, essentially ito, it pertains to the strategy. Tapos, yung organizational arrangements that include plans, relationships, accountabilities, resources, processes, and activities, yun yung architecture. And then yung framework, kailangan embedded siya sa organization's overall strategic and operational policies and practices. So, yun na yung mismong protocols. Okay? So, reiterate lang natin, strategy would pertain to the goals and objectives ng company and on what they want to happen to those risks. Okay, how they're going to handle those risks. Okay, they want to eliminate, they want to lower it at a manageable level that would, reduce the negative impact to the company, or they want to maximize the opportunities. So, yun yung strategy nila. Okay? And then, andun din syempre yung mandate and commitment na kumbaga, they have to implement it. Syempre, kung may plano ka lang pero hindi na na-implement, so what's the point, diba? And then you have your commitment na once na-implement yung risk management plan, then you have to make sure that everyone involved would do their part to achieve the success of the risk management plan, right? And then for the architecture, ito na nga yung specific plans, kasi yung strategy mo, you have the overall for the company, and then you have the individual plans to address specific risks present in specific departments or aspects of the business. Okay? So, kumbaga dito, more specific siya or more detailed yung how they're going to address the risk. Tapos, you have your relationships. So, let's say the departments, accountabilities din, sino yung magiging responsible for implementing the risk management plan on the department level or on that specific management level, and then how are they going to report it to the top, or di ba merong mga supervisor sila, tapos merong board of directors. So in a way, merong relationships, kasi sometimes meron din namang risk na hindi lang isang department yung affected, okay? Merong interrelationships na if this particular risk is present, not only is this department affected din yung yung let's say yung isa pang department or more than 2 departments, okay? So yun, merong relationships and they have to, of course, communicate kung paano nila i-handle yung risk, and then yung accountability, sino ba yung focal person, and then the other persons involved, ano yung kanilang gagawin. Okay, so they would be held accountable. Okay, and then resources, sometimes it would require resources to address or to eliminate or to reduce particular risk. So it should be noted na kailangan yung company, they have to be supportive and allot certain resources to the risk management plan. Okay, hindi na naman financial, minsan human resource din. Of course, you have your technological resources din. And then you have your processes and activities. Ano yung gagawin nila during the implementation, right? Tapos itong sa protocols, more on events din, activities, processes din. Pero, kumbaga, pina-formalize siya as part of the policies ng company. Okay, yung policy, something like manuals or what do you call this, guidelines na pina-follow ng mga employee at the rank and file level. Okay? So, kumbaga, yung iniisip nila na ways to counter the effects of the risk, naka-embed na siya dun sa mga activities or dun sa policies ng company. Okay? Ayan. Tapos, yung risk management guidelines natin, syempre, it would vary. Di ba? Customizable siya depending on the size and complexity of the organization. Syempre, kung mas maliit lang yung company, iba yung kanilang risk management plan, iba yung kanilang ways to counter the effects of the risk. Compared mo sa isang, let's say, nationwide ang operations ng company or yung iba pa, multinational ang operations ng company. Okay? So, sometimes, the bigger the scale, the more complicated are the risks that they face. Okay? So, ito yung mga types of documentation na kailangan nila. Risk Management Administration Records, Risk Response and Improvement Plans, Event Reports and Recommendations, Risk Performance and Monitoring Reports. So, if you would notice, ito medyo, tawag dito, related dun sa ating risk management process. Okay? So, ito kailangan ay mag-keep ng records para sa, in the future, you would know ano ba yung mga na-deal with na natin. And then, of course, kumbaga magiging basehan mo rin siya in creating responses or improvements. Okay? Ito yung mga nangyari before, ito yung kinalabasan, how do we improve the situation, or is it correct ba yung naging response back then, or do we have to change something? Okay? Then you have your event reports and recommendations. Ito for existing risk na i-deal with pa lang. Okay? But meron din naman cases na past experience na siya. Tapos, syempre, nag-i-evolve din naman yung mga types of risk na yan depending on how technology advances, ano yung mga generational changes sa human resource, ganyan. So, magkakaroon ng mga changes. Okay, so in that sense, you have to be dynamic or respond to those changes and make recommendations. So, kung anong babaguhin. Alright, and then you have your risk performance and monitoring reports. Then, sila nga. If may mga changes na ginawa or in effect, ano yung nangyari? Nag-improve ba talaga or lalo lang bang nag-deteriorate yung situation? So, you have to check that, okay, through monitoring reports then, okay? You check the performance and then monitor and then, of course, respond accordingly. Tapos, another document na meron, part of the risk management initiatives, yung risk register na tinatawag. Okay? Etong risk register, I think in the next chapter pa, merong format doon. So, skip muna natin siya. Alright, so yung risk management framework, if you would remember, ito yung RASP natin. Risk architecture, strategy, and then protocols. Okay? So, konting review, ano yung covered nila na aspects ng business. Okay? So, yung risk management architecture, we have committee structure in terms of reference, roles and responsibilities. Sino yung mga tao na andyan, and then ano yung mga responsibilities nila. You have your internal reporting requirements. Okay, let's say mga departmental managers, they would have to submit reports, let's say monthly, to the middle management. Tapos middle management would have to report to top level management. Okay, and then you have external reporting controls. Siguro ito more on compliance with the laws, especially mga DOLE, SSS, PhilHealth, Pag-ibig, BIR. They have to make sure that they're complying with their guidelines or their rules and regulations. Okay? And then risk management assurance arrangements. So, this could be under ng internal audit as well as external audit actually. So, kumbaga, chine-check kasi nila yung effectiveness ng controls in place in safeguarding the resources of the company. Okay? Ayan, yung next, risk management strategy. Under nito yung risk management philosophy, paniniwala ng management on how to deal with the risk. And then you have your arrangements for embedding risk management. Okay? Risk appetite and attitude to risk. Ayan, sila ba ay risk averse or risk aggressive? How much risk can they take on? And then you have your benchmark test for significance. Siyempre, chine-check muna kung significant ba magiging effect niyang risk na yan or hindi. So, in that sense, mo malalaman kung okay lang ba na pabayaan ng company yung risk na yan, yung presence ng risk na yan, or do we have to treat it, okay? And then, we have specific risk statements or policies, risk assessment techniques. So, ito, treatment na, no? How do you deal with the risk? And then, you have risk priorities for the present year. Siyempre, unahin yung mas malaki yung effect or possible effect on the company. And then, you have protocols, so tools and techniques na pwedeng gamitin to deal with the different risks. Then you have your risk classification, risk assessment procedures, risk control rules and procedures, responding to incidents, issues, and events. More on process na to, documentation and record keeping, training and communications, audit procedures, protocols, reporting, disclosure, and certification. And working relationship between risk management and internal audit. Itong internal audit, not only financial aspect yung kanyang sine-check, pati na rin yung process to make sure na nasa-safeguard yung resource, okay? So, ayan. Kasi, diba sa finance, let's say, ang risk kasi doon, kunwari, ay possibility of theft, incomplete recording of transactions, or erroneous recording ng transactions, di ba, yung 50,000 nagiging 500,000. Okay, tapos ay minsan ay, let's say, hindi sila nagbabank recon. So, hindi na check kung tama ba yung amount of cash in the bank compared to the records. Okay, so, in a way, part siya ng internal audit. And, syempre, yung process, procedures related to that, chine-check din kung effective ba or hindi. Okay? For example, how do you prevent erroneous recording? Okay? So, minsan, merong 2 or 3 people involved in checking that. Merong kang preparer or yung tao na nagpe-prepare, diba? Normally, makikita mo yun sa mga documents. Check vouchers, disbursement vouchers. Merong prepared by, tapos merong reviewed by. So, yung reviewed by, yun yung nag-check. Tama ba yung amounts? Tama ba yung date? Tama ba yung payee? Tama ba yung particulars that this payment will be made for acquisition of a particular product or service. Tapos you have your approved by na, nag-sign to approve the disbursement itself. Ayan. So, kumbaga, there are a number of people involved in certain transaction to ensure na proper yung recording nung isang transaction. Kasi kung isang tao lang yan, madali talaga yan, tawag dito, hindi na, madadaya, okay? Could be, tawag dito, exposure to fraudulent activities, okay? But since it would involve 2 or more people, so, yun, merong case and check ba na tinatawag. Unless, yun nga, magkaroon ng collusion between these 3 people. So, ayun, that's another risk. Yung nagsabuatan sila, maglalabas ng malaking pera out of the company. So, that's another risk. Okay? But then again, meron yung procedures to ensure na hindi siya mangyayari. Kasi aside from internal audit naman, meron din na external audit. And then sa external audit, syempre, mas strict sila, and sometimes, pag meron silang mga nakikita na significant amounts, they would have to ask, saan po ginamit ito? Especially kung, medyo, what do you call that? Medyo suspicious yung nakalagay na particulars or description of the transaction. Okay? And of course, you have to confirm. And when you confirm, normally, hindi siya dun sa taong nag-prepare, nag-review, and nag-approve mo siya, i-confirm. You have to ask other people to make sure na meron talaga nitong transaction na to and nangyari talaga itong transaction na ito. Kasi kung, syempre, if other people were not involved in a particular fraud, edi syempre, they would also ask, ano nga ba yung transaction na yan? Ba't meron yan? Parang wala naman kaming naaalala na may transaction na ganyan yung nangyari. Okay. May ganyang halaga na binayaran. Ganyan kalaki. Ayan. So, merong mga checking measures. Okay. Countermeasures. What do you call that? Cross-reference features. Okay. So, risk management expertise rests in the assessment of risk and identification of existing and additional controls. Okay. So, dun sa internal audit, you do it in internal audit, but you also do it under risk management. Yung ina-assess mo yung risk, significance niya, yung magiging impact niya, likelihood and impact, and then you have to identify yung existing and additional controls na kailangan to counter them. Okay? Internal audit has its expertise in the evaluation of controls and the testing of their efficiency and effectiveness. Okay? Risk architecture defines how information on risk is communicated. Yung strategy, risk strategy, yun yung overall objectives ng company. And then yung protocols, ito yung system standards and procedures na ini-implement to counter the risk. Okay? Risk management policy for a council. Kumbaga parang committee within an organization na sila yung focal committee na sila yung kumbaga mismong abala or responsible for the risk management. Okay? So, ayun. You want to read this? Okay, let's read this. Council is aware that some risk will always exist, especially hazard risk, and will never be eliminated. It recognizes that it has a responsibility to manage risk, both positive and negative, and supports a structured, systematic, and focused approach to managing them by approval of the risk management strategy. Okay? So, because of that, yung council, they must demonstrate effective corporate governance, better achieve its corporate objectives, enhance the value of services it provides to the community. Okay? Kumbaga ito yung goals then and objectives. And then, with regards to risk management strategy, ang objective nila, integrate the risk management into culture of the council, manage risk in accordance with best practice, anticipate and respond to changing social and legislative requirements. Ito nga, kailangan ay dynamic. Prevent injury, damage, and losses, and reduce the cost of risk. Okay, for risk na negative ang impact sa company. Raise awareness of risk with all involved with delivery of council services. Okay, normally, halos lahat ng employee, they would have to be aware of the risk present in the company so that they would be able to contribute in, monitoring, maintaining, and countering the risk. Okay. These objectives will be achieved by, first off, establishing clear roles, responsibilities, and reporting lines. Ito yung medyo mahirap sa isang company, especially kapag mayroong mga interrelationships ang mga departments na they would be dealing with the same type of risk. Minsan nag-iisip ng, sila nang bahala dyan. Okay? So, you have to make sure na clear yung roles and responsibilities para hindi sila nagtuturoan, di ba? Na, sila nang bahala dyan kasi they have to deal with this risk din naman. Paano kung yung pare-parehong department ganun ang iniisip? At the end of the day, no one dealt with the risk. So, it would be, in a way, disastrous or terrible for the company. Okay? So, kailangan clear roles and responsibilities and reporting lines. Okay? Kasi pagdating dito sa reporting lines, maghihintay yung middle or top management. Bakit parang walang nagre-report about this particular risk? Okay? Then they would have to check itong mga nasa, main, yung directly affected ng risk ng mga departments. Okay? Second, providing opportunities for shared learning on risk management. So, kumbaga parang support group, na in a way parang training din or education on how these people would be able to, better deal with the risk. Parang rin, may tinuturuan ka din. May learning. Offering a framework to direct resources to identified priority risk areas. Ito, resources. Minsan kailangan mo rin ng, pera. Let's say, insurable risk. So, are we going to take out insurance or not? Okay, meron namang mga particular risk na, merong available insurance naman, and then there are others na wala. And for those na wala, kumbaga hindi transferable yung risk to insurance company. So, you have to create measures, and sometimes setting up the measures would require money or resources then. Okay? Reinforcing the importance of risk management as part of every task. Then, increasing awareness of employees by offering training. Incorporating risk management into business planning. Kumbaga, ini-embed. Itong part na to, ini-embed. Incorporating risk considerations into partnerships and projects. So before mag-enter into, joint ventures, partnerships, kinoconsider din yung mga risk with that. And then, monitoring risk management and arrangements on an ongoing process basis. Okay? Kasi minsan nag-evolve din ang risk, especially yung medyo related sa technology. Yung risk management policy, ito yung main point talaga itong video. Risk management policy sets out the risk strategy, should facilitate successful implementation of risk management in the organization. Okay? So, kumbaga, parang manual. You have to make a formally written procedures, guidelines on how the company is going to deal with the different types of risk. Okay? Ito yung components ng risk management policy. Risk management and internal control objectives. Normally, begin with objectives naman talaga. Para, kumbaga, guide mo, provides you with the direction on where you're going with it. Statement of the attitude of the organization to risk. So, kumbaga para aware din lang. Currently, ang company ba ay risk-averse or risk-aggressive? So, kumbaga one of the considerations mo rin, kasi it would affect it would affect the different types of activities na pwedeng gawin ng company in dealing with the risk. Tapos, description of the control environment. May mga controls in place na ba? Or kulang pa yan? Or enough na ba? Or kailangan ng improvements? Or wala pa? Okay? And the next level and nature of risk that is acceptable, kumbaga ay risk capacity or appetite ng company. Risk management organization and arrangements. So, ito na yung risk architecture natin. So, kumbaga, you have your, yung plantilla, You have your top-level management, sino-sino yung mga yan, middle managers or supervisors, sino-sino yung mga yan, department heads, sino-sino yung mga yan, and then for particular aspects of the business, sino yung main person or main responsible person. Yan, kasi gagamitin mo naman yan later on in giving out the responsibilities. Arrangements for communicating risk information. So, are we going to create a database easily accessible for everyone or paper by hand? Documents. But for the most part, currently, ang suggestion is to make a database out of it para easily accessible. Kaysa naman dun sa mga naka-bookbind na documents na, have to flip through the pages pa before finding what you're looking for. So, mas maganda database. Computerized or online. Okay, and then next, where are we? Standard procedures for risk recognition and rating. So, this is part naman ng risk assessment. It would depend kasi on the nature, the industry, the complexity, the size of the organization, kung paano nila masasabi na yung isang particular risk ay, significant ang effect sa kanila or not. Okay? List of documentation for analyzing and reporting risk. So, you have your risk protocols. After identifying the risk, what do we do with them? Okay? How do we deal with them? Risk mitigation requirements and control mechanisms. Parang ganun din. Allocation of risk management roles and responsibilities. Ito parang nag-assign ka na ng sino yung tao na main responsible for dealing with a particular risk. Criteria for monitoring and benchmarking risk. Para may guidelines din naman. Hindi na masyadong mahirapan kasi naka-set out na itong criteria. Allocation of appropriate resources, and risk priorities and performance targets. So, siyempre, prioritize mo yung pinakamalaki ang magiging impact to the company. And then yung performance, did we do well or na-achieve ba natin yung goals or hindi? Did we go below or above? Risk management calendar of the coming year. Okay. Kasi naman ito ongoing naman. Kasi merong mga risk naman talaga na always present and hindi na i-eliminate totally. Okay? So, ayan. Yung risk guidelines, ito yung essentially risk management process ito. So, you have your risk assessment procedures, risk control objectives, resourcing arrangements, reaction planning requirements, risk assurance systems. Okay? I can review yung mga previous videos natin for you to some of the explanations for this. Okay? Risk management protocols natin. And protocols. Essentially, ito yung last ng risk management framework. Oh, what happened? Nangyari? Bumalik sa unahan. Wait lang. Ayan. Risk management protocols. Wait, what happened? Well, anyway. Okay. Risk assessment procedures. Ito. Examples lang naman to, no? But sometimes, some of these hindi applicable dito sa Philippines. More on, international companies. Okay? Example, turnbull procedures, response to significant risk, and projects and capex approvals, procedures for strategy and budgets. Okay? Some of these, ito, applicable. Risk control objectives, brand management guidelines, health and safety at work, environmental protection, contract risk management. Yan. Before entering into a contract, kailangan na review, tapos bawat sections, kailangan ay hinihimay, kailangan ay clear yung statements. Minsan kapag may mga vague statements or unclear statements sa contract, talagang pinapabago yan. Kailangan kasi ay very clear on the written contract para later on, pag nagka-problema, you have your clear answers. Hindi yung magtuturoan kayo ng other party on who's to blame. Risk resourcing arrangements, opportunity management, project resource allocation, insurance program, captive insurance company, reaction planning requirements, loss and claims management, if yung industry nyo ay merong ganyan. Disaster and recovery planning, cost containment procedures, risk management and record keeping. Tapos risk assurance systems, maintenance ng risk register, corporate risk management committee, terms of reference for audit committee, tapos control self-certification arrangement. Okay? Parang self-review lang naman ito. The framework or risk architecture set up to achieve adequate management of risk. Kailangan ay presented din siya sa risk management policy. Okay? Tapos yung risk management policy nga, kailangan ay included itong following details. Board member responsible for risk management. Itong board member kasi top yan. Kumbaga parang siya yung pinaka-main person responsible talaga. Okay? But when it comes to execution kasi, normally, yung mga nasa baba ang gumagawa ng execution. Language and perception of risk in the organization, parang culture, risk culture. Framework for identifying significant risk, yung process nila. Role of the risk manager and internal auditors. Okay, so you have your board, you have your top managers, and then you have your mga risk managers, internal auditors. Tapos below them pa yung mga individual department heads, nagre-report din sa kanila. Terms of reference for the risk management committees, and then you have your risk management structure or architecture. Okay? So, since nga nag-i-evolve din naman ang risk, okay, dynamic din sila, so kailangan yung risk management policy, ina-update din every year to reflect any changes. Okay? In line with current best practice. Okay? Kasi baka mamaya later, merong, mga studies showing na there are better ways on dealing different risks. Okay? Tapos, identify risk priorities for the coming year. Okay? Kasi after dealing with your current priorities, syempre, magbabago naman yan later on unless, sila pa din talaga yung greatest exposure ng company. Issuing the risk management policy every year also ensures that the board pays appropriate attention to risk management and that the organization understands that it is a dynamic activity that requires constant management attention. Okay? Risk management architecture, medyo paulit-ulit na lang tayo dito. Pero, okay, let's reiterate again para, tumatak sa ating isip. So, risk management architecture sets out lines of communication for reporting on risk management issues and events, reinforces the fact that the responsibility for managing risk remains with the owner of that risk. And in cases of businesses, business management ang owner ng risk. So, aspects of managing that risk, development of risk strategy and standards, implementation of the agreed standards and procedures, and then auditing compliance with the agreed standards. Okay? Yung second, risk management strategy, arrangements for ensuring risk management input into strategy projects and operations. Okay? Strategy, this is, business-wide projects, in case they're going to enter into new projects, and then you have your operations, current operations ng company. Okay, under nito, kasama din yung risk appetite of the organization, na usually ay nakabase sa opportunity investment, control acceptance, and hazard tolerance of the organization. Okay. Normally, yung risk appetite, yan yung within the total risk capacity of the organization. Okay. That would depend naman on the risk exposure ng company. Tapos yung last, risk management protocols. Again, RASP. Ito na, RASP. Risk architecture, strategy, protocols. Okay? Last itong protocols, set out in a series of risk guidelines, okay, manuals, ganyan, policy, essentially. Need to be established in writing. Nakalagay din doon yung frequency and nature of risk reports and who is responsible. Okay? Tapos, nire-review siya on an annual basis. And, nakalagay din doon yung extent of record keeping na nare-require. Okay? Okay, next, balik na tayo sa risk management documentation. Okay, under pa rin to ng risk management policy. Okay, so documentation, and so you have different aspects pa rin. You have your risk administration. Under ng administration or implementation, andyan yung policy, specific risk statements, na ina-address yung iba't ibang types of risk. And then you have your terms of reference of the risk or audit committees. Essentially, ito yung tao na responsible for overseeing everything risk-related. Okay? Risk protocols and procedures, risk awareness, training records. Okay? So, administration, implementation, yan. Tapos yung second, we have the risk response. Okay? After identifying the different types of risk, ano yung suggested procedures or yung suggested treatment for them. Okay? So, syempre, before you create naman yung response, you have to assess muna yung risk. And yung assessment ng risk, nakalagay siya sa risk register. Okay? Then, you have your risk control standards. Yun nga, parang yung mga suggested ways on dealing with the risk. Tapos, you have your risk improvement recommendations. Depending on the performance or the result of those controls, can create recommended improvements. And then you have your risk assurance reports, business continuity plans, or disaster recovery plans. Ito naman, parang hazard risk. And then, in case they happen, kailangan ay merong naka-prepare na plano yung company to ensure that they could continue their operations. Diba? Like, in cases of fire, nasunog yung building, so kailangan meron silang, disaster recovery plan or business continuity plan to make sure hindi maaapektuhan. Syempre, kunwari, supplier sila ng ibang company. Kung may nasunog yung kanilang building, how do they, continue to operate para hindi nila maapektuhan yung kanilang mga others, yung kanilang mga partners, mga customers, clients, ganyan. Okay? Kasi it would be bad for their overall strategies or objectives kapag may mga nangyaring ganun. Kasi, others would find them unreliable. Although, yes, it's a bad thing. It's hindi naman left to chance. Kasi, again, merong risk management na kayang i-counter yung effects ng risk. So, have to be reliable. Event reports, loss claim reports and recommendations, legal and litigation, enforcement action or customer complaints, incident and near-miss investigations, business performance reports, key performance indicators. Ito yung kapag may nangyari na. Okay? Kapag may nangyari ng mga ganyan na, merong impact sa company, let's say, loss or claim reports, litigation, di ba, kinasuhan kayo, tapos ito, customer complaints, incident or near-miss investigation, probably mga accidents or incidents or hindi naman sinasadya na non-compliance with rules and regulations. So, how do they deal with that? So, kailangan na properly recorded. And then you have your risk performance, control risk self-assessment returns. Ito parang result ito ng internal audit kasi internal audit naman yung nag-check nung existing controls in the company. Okay. Audit procedures and protocols, internal audit reports, unit risk management reports, external disclosure reports. Okay. Ayan. Tapos you have your risk management guidelines. Ito, establish detailed procedures on a range of risk management topics. Okay. So, mag-under siya ng risk management policy, pero more detailed na siya, right? For example, many organizations produce an annual health and safety and or environmental policy, and this should be an integral part of the risk management documentation. Ito, dalawang to, normally, halos lahat ng company would have this. Health and safety, syempre, ng kanilang employees and clients, ng kanilang premises, And then you have your environmental policy, kasi nga, part ng CSR, more environment conscious na mga clients, and they like to support businesses na meron mga environmental policy. Okay? So, ayan. For many organizations, risk guidelines will be established in writing, embedding risk management into management activities. Okay? Ang inclusions, details of the risk management structure in place in the organization, details ng risk management framework natin. So, you have your RASP ulit. Risk strategy protocols, details of internal control, responsibilities of managers. Okay? Need not, so hindi na to kasama, need not include a set of risk control or loss control standards, but should describe how risk control decisions will be taken, implemented, and audited. So yung each unit, division, department should set its own standards. Kasi nga, kailangan customizable siya on, the specific department. Hindi naman kasi pare-pareho yung mga departments sa isang business. And syempre, from one business to another, magkakaiba rin sila. Should define the means by which embedded risk management is to be achieved in the organization. So, kasala rin siya dun sa risk guidelines. Information, nakasama doon, financial and authorization procedures, insurance arrangements, meron ba? Managers control responsibilities, project risk management, incident reporting and investigation. And normally, meron dito sa mga employee manual, pag nakalagay na. Event and reaction planning, physical risk control objectives, and responsibilities. Okay? Ito ang physical risk control objectives. Parang ganun din. Type of risk, tapos sino yung main person na better suited to address and deal with it. Okay? So, ayan lang for Chapter 7, Risk Management Policy. Alright? So, that's it for this one. Thanks and bye.